Welcome, everyone. It's lovely to see all of your guys' faces. I'm excited to be here. This is my first volunteer orientation, so I'm excited. I just want to acknowledge that the Wild Bird Trust is located on the ancestral, traditional, and unceded territories of the Tsleil-Waututh peoples. And it has been their home since time immemorial, and it is important to us at the Wild Bird Trust to acknowledge that and also to repair any wrongs we may have done in the past, and to continue with our commitment to reconciliation and redress. And so I am really it's lovely to see all of your guys. Oh, okay, sorry, hold on, guys. I can hear the Facebook live stream in the background. So basically, that's where the Wild Bird Trust is located, and we are very thankful to be located there. And I myself am Stalo from Lakamel First Nation, and I am coming to you also from Tsleil-Waututh lands, just a little bit further. So yeah, so welcome everyone, and yes, let's begin.
Thank you, Nicole. That's awesome. Yeah. Right. So just kind of to emphasize where Maplewood Flats is in relation to the Tsleil-Waututh Reserve lands. So this is Maplewood Flats here and the reserve lands for the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. So it's within a kilometer of each other. So we really have that kind of responsibility to really build a relationship and a collaboration with Tsleil-Waututh Nation and come to an understanding of how the site should be, managed in the future. And that's why we're committed to unlearning a lot of the colonial ways that the site has been stewarded over the past 28, 30 years, that it's been disdained a conservation area, so to speak. All right, so continue and we'll just go on to our roadmap. And we'll start with a bit of a primer, an introduction to the organization, the Wild Bird Trust itself, talk about a bit of the values and some of the things we do in relation to those values. And then we'll go on to do a review of the volunteer program and the different sort of volunteer roles that are on offer, and then other ways you can be a part of the organization. Then we'll accept questions at the end. So, of course, from time immemorial, this land has been Tsleil-Waututh, Musqueam, Squamish, other Coast Salish Nation land up to present time. And then quite recently, just a blip on that time scale, there started to be arbitrary lines built, property lines built, obviously with no consultation to local First Nations, like the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. And if you want to learn more about the history of Indigenous peoples in the Lower Mainland or in Burnaby, there's which is on the other side of Burrard Inlet. There's a really great resource guide that has been developed by Dr. Sharon, Sharon Fortney, and the Burnaby Village Museum, with contributions from Kwantlen, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam First Nations. And it actually won a national award for achievement in education last year. So I actually have it printed out myself. And I've read it, and I just I think it's a very valuable resource, and I really recommend you just, if you don't have as like a deep knowledge, just to start there. And then so the colonial history of Maplewood Flats, we'll start there at these aerial photographs, really showing the difference in development in the area within 100 years even.
Sorry, Marissa, I just wanted to say really quick, I am putting links in the chat just for everyone to know of all the resources Marissa is going to be talking about. So the Indigenous History Guide, I've just put in there, and I'll be putting in other things as well. Just want to let people know. Thank you. Sorry.
That's great. Thank you. I forgot to mention that. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. So how did we get from, supernatural, a really dynamic coastline to hard armament on all our like heavily populated areas like this, basically? So it really started at the beginning of colonization with the name of the game, which was logging, extensive logging in surrounding watersheds. And you would have these massive log floats like this in water bodies and inlets like Burrard Inlet. And if you see these vertical posts kind of standing up in the water, they're the pilings that they would tie these log booms to keep them from floating away. And if you have ever come to Maplewood Flats and looked across the mud flats, you would see some pilings like that actually remaining from this time. They're relics from this time. And we use them today in a more productive way as posts to mount purple martin nest boxes, which a colony of purple martins actually returns to Maplewood Flats every year now to lay eggs in these nest boxes. Sorry, so it's been pretty successful, the nest box program, using this old history. Yeah, there's a whole story behind the purple martins, but that's for another time. And then another part of the colonial history is the Deeks McBride Sand and Gravel Company. That was in operation for many decades, and this photo is from 1950. I managed to get this higher resolution photo after the last volunteer orientation, so you guys can see a nicer version of it now, but it's quite shocking because what we're looking at is into Burrard Inlet from around the Dollarton Highway area, and everything you see there would be Maplewood Flats, the conservation area now as we know it. But on this side in that area was a sand and gravel quarry that was in operation. And I wanted to show this especially. I know if you've come to Maplewood Flats, you've probably seen this channel that kind of bisects the whole conservation area. And it's called the Barge Channel. And kind of intuitively, you can guess from that name that it's man-made, human-made. Let's be honest, it was man-made. So it was dredged into the terrestrial portion of the area to transport some of the sand and gravel and ore materials into Burrard Inlet to ship out to wherever it was heading. So pretty interesting history that's still there today as well. And another really interesting piece of history, colonial history, is this history of squatter shacks. It's not what I call them, it's what they're colloquially called. But basically for many decades after colonialization of the area, a lot of artists and workers and quote unquote hippie types, or countercultural types, would build these shacks or homes on the mudflats on stilts, and they would just live there. And they made their own houses on the mudflats, which was a jurisdictional gray area, which is how they kind of got away with it for so long. Yeah, so naturally, there's lots of complaints from surrounding residents and with some other concerns about sanitation and wastewater and that sort of thing. Rather shockingly, with this picture, I think this is the same shack. The district started burning down these shacks in 1971. And basically, that piece of history was just left there. And yeah, I was pretty shocked to hear about this when I first got involved with the Wild Bird Trust, because I had no idea about it before. And if you come to the flats, when you walk just inside after the parking lot, and if you look into the barge channel, you'll see kind of an homage to those squatter shacks in that period of history from this just sort of downscaled replica of these shacks by an artist called Ken Lum. They're installed there. And they were originally, I think, at Emily Carr. Correct me if I'm wrong, Leanne. And then they were moved to...
Yeah, they were.
It was Emily Carr, but also the Vancouver Art Gallery.
Yes,
yeah. That's right.
But I remember seeing them when I was in school. And when I saw them here, I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
But yeah.
And then they were also moved to the Shangri-La Hotel, that behemoth downtown. And so the piece of this piece of art is titled "From Shangri-La to Shangri-La." So pretty cool thing there. And then, of course, there's been a bevy of other industrial activity that's occurred on Maplewood Flats over the years. It's been used as a construction fill and garden soil dumping ground. So you'll just randomly find pieces of concrete or asphalt kind of just littered throughout the site, just randomly on the ground, or kind of wedged into the sand on the beaches. There used to be an auto body shop. There's still a concrete pad on the west side of the site that was used where an auto body shop used to be. And it's still there. So it's not the auto body shop, but the concrete pad. So there used to be a trucking depot, and then you can kind of see on the southern portion of the site, the water is a lot deeper. And the port actually dredged this area at one point, thinking they would build a seaport there, which never happened. And here I found this other cool picture view of the Maplewood Flats at low tide. And you can kind of see that dredged area, it's still there. Although the port has actually started working on this Maplewood restoration plan, and part of it is increasing reducing the depth of that area there to kind of restore some of the habitat, because it's not very favorable for vegetation or any sort of the benthic creatures that would normally be there. And also, if you kind of cover your screen at the edge of that, where the mudflats are on the right, and if you move your hand, it's kind of weird. There's that really obvious divide. So if you were to imagine without moving your hand, the mudflats would just continue naturally that way. But we just have this really square piece of land. So that's basically all man-made. Maplewood Flats, it's all from the construction fill and the dumping of all the soil. That's just man-made. So otherwise it would have been this really dynamic, natural Maplewood Flats coastline. Sorry, mudflats coastline. But because of this, now we have a really hard line, and yeah, it's really interesting. And actually on the left, it's a very our site is very obvious post-industrial site, but there's still industry around. If you look to the left, there's a mix of heavy and light industry there. And right next door we have, I think, the biggest or the only chlorine gas manufacturing plants on the west coast of North America. So there's still a lot of industry going on around the site. So here's just a picture I wanted to include about the asphalt just randomly popping up. I was with a volunteer, we were cutting some blackberry, and then lo and behold, there's just some random piece of concrete on the forest floor. So yeah. And then in 1993, the Maplewood Flats becomes a conservation area through lots of lobbying of local environmental groups and residents, because the ports actually wanted to develop the site into a residential mix with commercial area, but thankfully that didn't happen. And then also in 93, the Wild Bird Trust is formed. And just a note on the kind of the quote unquote ownership of the site, because of course, this is traditionally not colonial land, obviously, but part of the site is owned by the District of North Vancouver, and part of the site is owned by the Port of Vancouver. And the land itself is, they're the landlords, and the Environment and Climate Change Canada is renting the site from those landlords. And the Wild Bird Trust has an agreement with Environment Canada to steward the site, and then we have some agreement and some contracts that have to go along with that. So it's a bit complicated, but it's of note. And then over the years, there's been infrastructure added to the site, like the Barge Channel Bridge that connects the two sides of the site that were kind of cut off from each other from the barge channel being built. And there's a greeter hut that was used for many years to greet visitors entering the site, and has lots of resources. Before COVID times, we can't really enter there because it's too small. And then we also have a native plant nursery that operates as a social enterprise for the Wild Bird Trust, advancing some of our mandate that way. And providing restoration materials and plants for the public, native plants. And then we have the Corrigan Nature House, which was actually built in 2015, so quite recent. And it was built from generous donations from the Norbury Foundation, Doris and Jack Corrigan, I think. And and yeah, Doris and Jack Corrigan, and then also, of course, many other generous donors. And there's an office space in there and a large meeting area that we use for educational events, programs for kids, art and cultural exhibits, educational events, and event hosting. And if you weren't aware, the Nature House is actually available for venue booking. So if you have a thing, think of us. And then so moving on from that, and after acknowledging that the establishment of Maplewood Flats and Wild Bird Trust actually served to cut off and exclude the Tsleil-Waututh Nation from the site for a second time, essentially, where the organization is trying to move towards recognizing those mistakes and a more collaborative and relationship that will create hopefully a protocol agreement and alignment of joint interests for how to manage the site into the future. That's, you know, that's under the guidance or the agreement of Tsleil-Waututh Nation. Yeah. So some of the values of the Wild Bird Trust, very neatly surmised, I think, by the mission statement, which is to provide wild birds with sanctuary through ecological protection and restoration, and to support communities with education, culture, and reconciliation programs. So first says conservation and habitat restoration, which is of course an ongoing commitment for the Wild Bird Trust in Maplewood Flats. And we approach conservation in many ways through invasive plant management, and that can be through pulling, or on the picture on the left, you can see one technique that's being used to try and eradicate a patch of yellow flag iris that was from the summer. This technique that was developed by Dr. Catherine Tarasoff, and she's been going around and helping different land stewards learn how to do this technique, because yellow flag iris is very invasive, but that's a whole other story too. And then on the right, you can see some BCIT students, because we always try and provide opportunities for researchers to conduct studies on site, and collaborating with schools and students to learn some of these, learn how to do some of these research projects is also a way we kind of contribute to conservation on site. And yeah, so here's another picture on the left of another plant that we need to manage on site, Himalayan blackberry. And then so we pull invasives like this, we dig them out, and then we also have to plant native plants. And all this work is impossible without volunteers. Volunteers are really the lifeblood of the organization, and us staff are really just kind of the logistical support in helping the volunteers accomplish their goals for the site. And then, yeah, some more research projects there on the right. We're going through purple martin nests after the nesting season, and they've all fledged. And we also conduct bird surveys on site. So regular and consistent bird surveys is another way we do research and conservation on site by collecting that data. And here's some more research projects that have been conducted at Maplewood Flats recently. On the left, there's another BCIT student team who did some small mammal research and catch and release with some rodents there. And then on the right was a presentation that a student from Capilano University, Harrison, did this in September. And he told us some results he got from surveying macroinvertebrates in the wetlands at Maplewood Flats. Another value is, of course, education. And like education, we have such a beautiful environment around Maplewood Flats. It might not be supernatural, but it's there, and we can use it to provide the community with education and educational content about conservation issues, Indigenous knowledge, and provide workshops like and presentations like they're like on the left there. Educationally, we also produce a semi-annual publication called Wingspan, where we get writings from volunteers, and we put callouts for certain topics and staff writings. And this is a more provincially focused initiative. And yeah, so yeah, it's a good opportunity if you're interested, maybe not in going outdoors, but you're interested in writing and communications. That's a really good way to get involved. We offer events like bird walks, lectures, and presentations, nature education programs for kids as well. So it's a pretty robust program. However, in COVID times, we can't really provide a lot of these in-person educational opportunities. So now we've kind of shifted to online events like this one. Otherwise, we'd normally have this volunteer orientation in person. And just to kind of show you what we've done recently, we have started or joined sort of a campaign against the Roberts Bank Terminal 2 project. And we've recently had those presentations. We've had a birding basics workshop with the board member, Kevin Bell. And in early December, we had a researcher with the Stewardship Center of BC come to talk about the Vancouver Cat Count project and how cats really affect birds and local urban wildlife. So, and just on Thursday, we had a really, really great workshop with Kate McEwen, who's actually a new volunteer. She signed up with us in October. And this is another way you can volunteer your time, is by, if you have a specialized skill or something you want to share with the membership, it kind of falls in line with our mandate, is to share that knowledge and those skills. So Kate is the BC Parks iNaturalist project coordinator, and she gave a run through of the iNaturalist app and how to use it for citizen science. So it was pretty cool.
And just to let you know, all those Zoom events are all available on YouTube, so, and our Facebook, but probably easiest to search on YouTube. So I'll be sending links after this to our YouTube channel, and if you just click our little thing, you'll be able to go browse all of them. But yeah, and you get to see my beautiful face because I lead them. So
no, it's true. Thank you for that. Yeah, didn't want to forget that. So if you're interested in any of those workshops or presentations, you didn't miss out. They're always available. And yeah, so the next value is the culture, and it's, I think, something that's really important to develop a sense of community and belonging. And while Bird Trust considers art to be an important expression of culture and of expressing historical, social, environmental issues, and so we regularly display photography and art exhibitions in the Nature House. For example, right now we have the annual members photo exhibit that Nicole helped set up. And so,
along with volunteer Mary Lyle.
That's right.
So that's another thing, is like, if you're interested in like other things that maybe aren't so bird related, definitely tell us, because you can come set up an exhibit or whatever it might be, an event. So yeah, just like Marissa's saying, there's a lot of opportunities.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to keep interrupting Marissa.
That's okay. I mean, we'll go over this a bit more later too, so it's okay. And yeah, so in the middle on the right there are some artist in residence programs, partnerships we had with Indigenous artists, and they were kind enough to share their talents and skills. And now we have these installed on site. They're there now. You can go look at them. And we also have an annual Osprey Festival, which is an annual event celebrating community, conservation, culture, and art, while honoring Coast Salish lands. So it's a really great cultural festival that hasn't happened this past year. We're not really sure how it's going to play out this summer, but it'll hopefully be in some kind of form, maybe online. We're not sure yet, but yeah. And then of course, reconciliation, I think implies that there was a good relationship in the first place, but the board has taken a more proactive stance on reconciliation by committing to real action and to try and repair some of these past mistakes that have happened in the establishment of Maplewood Flats. And like we mentioned just a second ago, to move forward in a more collaborative working relationship. And try not to treat reconciliation as just this, amorphous, ambiguous entity. It's something that needs to be accomplished through all of the activities that happen on site. So It's just not something that we can tack off on the end. It's really, we're doing reconciliation through conservation. We're doing reconciliation through art and culture, and we're doing reconciliation through educational programs. So it has to be through everything. Right. And a way we kind of internally started the decolonization process, obviously, there's no end end line for reconciliation. It's an ongoing process, ongoing learning forever. But we started this internal decolonization process by developing a habitat and cultural use plan. And we're really excited to, you know, kind of go further after this project. Okay, so we've kind of finished that part of the presentation, which is sort of an introduction to Wild Bird Trust, sort of a primer to what we're all about. And then now we're moving on to how to become a volunteer. And I'm happy to tell you the first thing you have to do to become a volunteer is to become a member. So there's been a lot of conversations here about the term volunteer, how it's kind of not the kind of term we want to use, but because it makes the most sense with the current vernaculars, we use volunteer, but it implies a certain hierarchy, which we try to not have here at the Wild Bird Trust, because I would say most, if not all of the ideas and the work are supposed to be coming from volunteers. And like I said, staff are just sort of like a supporting mechanism to support that work. And we operate in a participatory democratic process where all volunteers have the ability to have a voice and contribute their ideas and knowledge and skills and all of that stuff. And so what are some of the benefits of becoming a member? You will receive a Wingspan magazine each time it's published, and it'll arrive to you in the mail free of charge, of course. And you'll be the first to know about events and workshops through our monthly e-newsletters. And you'll support the work we do at the Wild Bird Trust that goes right back into the community and into conservation, habitat restoration, and then all the arts and cultural projects we were talking about earlier. And of course, you have the chance to volunteer. So what you gain by being a volunteer is kind of very subjective. I wanted to see, I invited a current volunteer, Lena. I don't know if you're on the call yet.
Yes, hello.
Hi.
Hi,
Yeah,
hi, Marissa.
Yeah, this is Lena. She's been a nursery volunteer at the Wild Bird Trust. And I just wanted to ask Lena what kind of things she does at the nursery. So you want to share your favorite tasks or the things that you've done recently at the nursery that you've enjoyed?
Right. Hi, Marissa. I got, and hi, everybody. Lena, actually. My name is Lena.
All right, Lena.
I got involved in the summer, so it was a peak of the sales. So I started my volunteering, just participating in meeting people, selling plants. And I found it really very interesting to talking to people who come in. Some people come to really buy plants for their own gardens. Some come just to ask questions and just see what's around.
Yeah.
And what, because of COVID, it was all, there were usually only 2 people maximum in the nursery. And, but I found there was a lot of actually people coming in and being interested and asking questions.
Yeah.
And later in the season, we started preparing some seeds and going around and cutting, preparing cuttings and planting the cuttings and doing the inventory of the seeds and plants which were already potted. So what I really enjoy is working with lots of talents. There is this, our group is quite small, but there's lots of talents. So there's an opportunity to also learn from each other. So the sharing knowledge is part of fun. And the other thing that I really enjoy is just being outside all the time and participating in various tasks. So, you know, we prepare cuttings, we walk around in the flats, and you know, for instance, last week we took cuttings of salmonberry, and what was else? I think it was something else I will remember. So it's a good opportunity for people to get involved, and I'm sure whoever would end up working in the nursery would really enjoy it.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lena. That was really great insight. I've done one shift with the volunteers at the nursery, and I found it really interesting how so many people come in and just want to learn about native plants. And I think it's a really great opportunity to learn about plants yourself, even if you don't know everything. But yeah, thank you for your insights. And this is our special guest, Lena. Thank you very much.
All right, Marissa.
Right.
See you later.
Awesome. Okay, so yeah, so that's a really great way, really great subjective response to what you gain by being a volunteer. And I've been involved with the site maintenance and habitat restoration volunteers all through the summer, and it's a really great way to kind of get some physical activity in, and you also learn some of the plants on sites, and so you gain some skills yourself, and it's fun, like Lena said. So what kind of volunteers are at the Wild Bird Trust? So I would say at the top, of course, is the board of directors. And then there's a bunch of committees, 4 committees. And then there's sort of the quote unquote regular volunteering. So first of all, the board of directors. This is from our most recent wingspan. And I've just circled all the people on the board in that picture. And they're kind of just the leadership committee, basically, and they set long and short-term organizational goals and try to ensure that the organization's activities stay on track and follow the mandates and the resolutions they've set. And they operate as a participatory democracy. And board of directors is also in charge of the finances of the organizations, the staffing, and yeah. So lots of good talent there. And there's also committees. So the committees are kind of in charge of different areas, different kind of sections. There's in each committee, there's a committee chair. So it's the person who kind of does the most responsibility in coordinating and organizing. And then there's a co-chair who mainly acts as a support to the committee chair. And then there's the committee members. So commitment wise, you're looking at 1 meeting per month, plus any other hours that you need to contribute to, follow through with any of the activities that are decided on in committees. And then you also have to try and commit to majority of the yearly meetings, so once per month, so maybe like 10 meetings per month. You want to try to be at everyone and show active participation. And yeah, and so we'll go through the different committees that are there right now. There's a programs committee, and yeah, so basically everything we talked about what happens with the culture and arts, and education. A lot of that is planned by the programs committee. They come up with ideas for, arts and cultural exhibits in the nature house, workshops, presentations. On the bottom there on the left, you see one of the events at one of the Osprey festivals, musical events, and then talks and all of that stuff. But right now, of course, it's planning these online events and getting some interesting topics for people to tune in and learn. And then next is the communications committee. And if you're not following us already, that's our handle at Maplewood Flats on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And this is our most recent Wingspan magazine, publication. And there's a Wingspan working group that kind of operates under the purview of the communications committee. So even if you don't want to, say, work on signage or social media, which are the things that other things that communications committee work on, and you're just interested in writing or, you know, typesetting, editing, all that sort of stuff, you can just be involved in the Wingspan working group, and then you can just work on the one thing that you're interested in. So you don't have to feel like you're pigeonholed into any of the roles that are kind of defined here. And that's the same for all of these roles, or sort of job descriptions for volunteers. And then the next committee is the Habitat Committee. And they have a lot of the responsibility for planning restoration projects. Whatever happens in the habitat, they kind of are in charge of, you know, planning and coordinating and research projects and developing plans for, you know, invasive species removal. For example, we're going to be starting an invasive species mapping working group, where we're going to get a group of volunteers with this app called Avenza Maps to kind of create polygons around different patches of invasive species, and then we can use that to develop action plans on how to manage these invasive species. So there's really a lot of options for anybody who wants to get involved in these different, you know, sort of areas of operation. And the last committee here is the fundraising committee. It's kind of dormant right now, but obviously it's very important in terms of raising funds, you know, finding and writing out grant applications, managing the bench program. For example, we have merchandise right now we're selling, and you can actually go to our website, wildbirdtrust.org/shop, if you are interested in purchasing some of our merchandise. There's some of that on the table, like shirts, calendars, seed packets, and greeting cards. Yeah, so it's just really, really important way for us to fill our mandate, or if, you know, something unexpected happens, like our groundwater pump that fills our constructed wetlands breaks, we need to raise money, and we need a dedicated group of people who know how to fundraise to kind of raise those funds. So yeah, if you have experience fundraising, we would love to hear from you.
Yeah, and that's just, if I could just jump in quickly,
Yeah,
it's
please do.
campaigns, it's specific campaigns. So the fundraising committee would be looking at, with the board, from direction from the board, what is the fundraising goal for this year? Are there particular things that we need to direct the funds towards that we're short on from other sources? So like you can see, the Help Fill the Pond was a very specific campaign that came up unexpected because our pump stopped working, and to replace it, it was over $10,000. So the community stepped up, and we did one at the beginning of the lockdown, which again, the committee came forward and we raised over 10,000 with that, thanks to the many generous individual donors. And we may be starting one to help fundraise for a small vehicle that can be used by the restoration and site manager and the volunteers that do the habitat restoration on site. So again, it'll have about the same kind of goal, because we anticipate that vehicle, you know, we want it to be a green vehicle, and like maybe an electric or something. So this is great, but also fundraising in the way that Marissa's mentioned around the merchandise that's related to what we do and helps support our work. So it's ongoing. It can be events, like every event that we have would also have a fundraising component. So anyone who has experience with that, we're not necessarily a corporate fundraising machine, shall we say. We prefer more ground level, but yeah, so
yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, and it's like we have projects that we have planned on the horizon that would really benefit from, you know, some fundraising activities. So
yeah, and then there's the grant writing, which, you know, that's often the responsibility of the staff, but if somebody does have grant writing skills, we will welcome you. Yeah,
like everybody has obviously a different skill set, and like I said, you don't have to feel like, if you feel like your skill set doesn't match exactly into what I'm talking about, there's always opportunities to fit in somewhere, because we're not just we're not just doing habitat restoration, we're doing communications, graphic design, administrative stuff, all that sort of thing, all those sort of things. So yeah, so we'll just move on to some of the more sort of active or like mobile or regular volunteer positions. We've yet to really come up with a really descriptive ring to this name. So the first one we'll cover is the site maintenance and habitat restoration volunteers. And they help with, promoting coast salish planting or native planting on sites. They play an important part, and it's probably one of their important duties is trail maintenance. We have, I forget how many kilometers, 3 kilometers of trails, 3 to 5, 3, 5, anyways. And they all have to be level to support accessibility for wheelchairs and walkers and all that sort of thing. So, and also invasive plant control and removal as part of habitat restoration efforts, and which would improve habitat value for native species on sites. And that includes also, replanting some of these native species. And, other landscaping tasks, like part of our agreement with Environment and Climate Change Canada, they have a building across the parking lot. If you've ever been on site, you'll have seen it. Part of our agreement with them is to help them with some of their outdoor landscaping tasks. So there's some light stuff like raking leaves and doing a few gardening things, mulching, weeding, but it's minor. And then right now we're going to be meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we'll start at 9 a.m. and you can, if you can contribute 2 hours at least every week, or a little bit more every other week if you can, that would be great for commitment. Right now, we're still trying to figure out a good way. We just hired a new restoration and site manager. And so we're just trying to find a groove for everybody. And we'll also be working sporadically on Sundays as well. But once you're on the email list, you'll get more information on those sorts of things. So for example, I'll give you some examples of things volunteers would work on. Some of this invasive species removal. We're cutting away some blackberries that have overgrown some saplings that were grown last year's on Family Day by lots of kids and parents, and just trying to keep that clear for the trees to grow. And then here are some volunteers where they planted a tree. So yeah, it's pretty satisfying once you plant something, I have to say. And here, pretty recently, just a few days ago, and then on last weekend, we were working on a plant salvage on a site across the street from Maplewood Flats, and we're getting some big, beautiful sword ferns, because that whole site will be developed, and we're just trying to save what we can, and then hopefully use them in our sites, introduce them to Maplewood Flats and our restoration efforts, and bring more native plants on site. So yeah, pretty cool. So the next position we'll talk about is the trail host. So what trail hosts will do when it's safer for people to be close together, because we're not going to be doing trail host right now, of course, is to walk the trail in pairs to interact with the public. You'll answer questions and share resources and your knowledge about birds and wildlife. And we'll ask you to monitor trail activities and trail safety. So we have some rules that people tend not to follow sometimes, and we're trying to gather information on how the site is being used, and how often people are not following those rules. And then also, if say like a tree falls on the trail, you can tell us. You can come back and tell us, and then the site maintenance volunteers will go out with this site manager and hopefully take care of it quickly. One condition for this role is that you should be able to walk the trails easily or have the ability to maneuver the trails easily. And the next position are the exhibit interpreters. So you can support visitor access and engagement with exhibits and educational displays, talk about the exhibit, the artwork, the photographers, the artists. You can host the event guests if that's what's happening. And you'll help with opening and closing depending on when you're working there. And then you'll help to set up exhibits. So Nicole mentioned it briefly, or I did earlier on. This is Nicole on the left and Mary Lyle, a volunteer, on the right. Very proud of their work in framing some of these beautiful photographs. They're for our members' annual photo exhibit. So those are all photos taken by members and submitted for the annual calendar. That's for sale, actually. And the next position would be Nature House hosts, similar, I would say, to what the greeter hut greeters would do before in the past. Like I said earlier, the greeter hut's sort of off limits now because it can't hold any more than one person safely in terms of physical distance. So what we've been doing is having someone in the nature house or set up outside if it's not too cold, and you're there to welcome and engage visitors as they come in, and hand out Wingspan magazines and maps and answer any questions they might have about the site or if anything that's going on. And if available, you'll help some of our fundraising, fundraising efforts with merchandise sales, like that picture on the left there. And you'll receive donations and try to also receive membership sales to welcome more people into our group. The next role is social media community manager. So you would just help with posting scheduled and new content on social media and manage some of those public interactions. I believe we didn't even have any social media presence like 4 years ago, and we just had a clunky website, and now we have a beautiful website, and we have 3 really thriving social media platforms, and it's really I would say Instagram in particular is another way for us to kind of show art and culture, because we and interacting with our members and the public, because we can share their photographs and their stories about Maplewood Flats, and it's a really great way to engage with the community. So it's a really important role in this day and age. And the next position is the native plant nursery. We heard a little bit about that from Lena with her beautiful explanation of things she did this summer. Basically, what you're doing, part of it is helping with plant sales and education, telling people how to plant native plants, because it's possible to landscape with native plants, and there's some beautiful options out there. You'll help tend to plants, make sure they get the waterings they need in the summers, and you'll help with nursery outreach and nursery development in the off season. And so normally the kind of active season is in the spring and the summer. However, this year they actually stayed operational throughout the fall and the winter, and they're not open regularly on Saturdays like they would in the summer. But if you email the nursery, it's a nursery at wildbirdtrust.org, and you inquire about a plant sale, we're more than happy to help accommodate you if we have what you're looking for. And another position we have is data entry, time consuming, but very, productive, and you get a sense of accomplishment. If you've ever filled out a data spreadsheet and after you come to the end, I think you'll agree with me. I've had that experience before, but you'll help enter our monthly bird survey data onto online eBird citizen science platforms and for our own databases. And you'll input other raw data into spreadsheets depending on what projects crop up. For example, we could use some help with inputting purple martin data, raw data, into a spreadsheet. And also, if you have the experience and you would like to help with some data analyses for some of these data sets, that would be greatly appreciated. We'd always want to know what's going on with our birds on site and with the purple martins over the years. So that would be a really great help if you had that ability. And the next one is archivist. So you can help with our records management, which would include inventory, organization, and maintenance of some of the stuff we have. Digitizing physical files. And actually from our last volunteer orientation, we had this really kind person volunteer his huge professional quality scanning equipment at home to help digitize all of our as many physical files as we want to. Unfortunately, we haven't really gotten around to it yet, but we have a lot of work going on. So yeah, like just stepping forward, and just, he might not be interested in, you know, pulling BlackBerry, but he has this really specific skill in scanning documents. So, you know, if you can help in the smallest way, that really helps, and you're still contributing to the overall mandate and values of the organization. And so those are sort of our defined volunteer roles in right now. I sound like a broken record, but don't feel like that's all there is. Sometimes we put call outs for volunteers with specific skills. For example, right now we are looking for people with CRM experience or knowledge on how to use CRM softwares or integrate that with you know, organizations, and also volunteers with fundraising experience, because we'd like we mentioned, we'd love to start up that fundraising committee and, you know, fundraise for some of these projects and you know, campaigns that we have in the background. And then there's also other volunteer opportunities that pop up. For example, there's the monthly bird surveys. Just a note about the monthly bird surveys. I know it's really attractive, but because of COVID, we're only doing those with I think 2 people right now. So that's kind of not a whole, not something we can really offer to volunteers right now. There's also special working groups that pop up. Like I mentioned, the invasive species mapping working group, that's going to be coming up soon. And other things like the wingspan working group. And I'm sure there's other working groups I just can't think off the top of my head right now, but they're things that pop up all the time. And there's other special projects, like here you have Mary Lyle, a volunteer. She's sorting seeds for the seed packets that we're selling for in our merchandise, because otherwise we just have you know, get seeds in bulk, and that's not really merchandisable. So yeah. And if you have any like ideas for programming or events, we have a public programs proposal that you can submit your ideas to. I think Nicole can put that in the chat for you all to open up and save for yourselves if you ever come up with an idea. So in conclusion, what we went over today, basically we covered the fact that Maplewood Flats is not really a pristine natural site. It's a very complicated site with lots of complicated colonial history, but we also want to acknowledge and, you know, more than that, you know, really honor the fact that that was a site that was stewarded successfully and sustainably for over 13,000 years by local First Nation communities before any outsiders step foot on, you know, on the soil here. And that we're a newly transformed group. We're continually trying to holistically decolonize the organization and build relationships with Tsleil-Waututh in different ways and with different groups, because they're just not one entity. They're made up of people, right? So we have to kind of recognize that as well, and, you know, approach that and in that kind of open-minded way. And then also we covered the many and varied ways you can become involved as active participants and collaborators with the Wild Bird Trust. And just to show you, before you can become a volunteer, we mentioned you have to be a member first. So here's the membership pricing options. I think Nicole can put a link to this page on the website in the chat. There's the regular $30 a year single membership, or $50 for 2 years. And then the $40 per year for family membership. And for low income and students, you have a $15 per year membership. And for those very committed to what we're doing, we have an option to just have a one-off $500 and with a lifetime membership fee. That's pretty cool. So I just wanted to thank everybody for showing their interest and logging on and registering for this event. And it's great to see your faces, and I hope to hear from you soon. I believe Nicole can can put the volunteer information form.
Yeah.
After you become a member, you can fill out the volunteer information form in the chat. And you can also email me at volunteer@wildbirdtrust.org if you have any questions or any concerns. I'm more than happy to answer them. And
There is one question in the chat, just to let you know, Marissa.
oh, okay. You
Yeah,
mind reading it
I can
out?
read it to you. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's from, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make
No,
sure.
that's fine. I was done.
Sweet. It is from Crystal. Is there any way to participate without committing to monthly meetings, at least initially? I have a background in writing and editing / education, but I am more interested in getting outside, working with plants, and having just retired, I really want to avoid monthly meetings. Totally feel that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Can I get on a list of odd jobs to do?
Yeah, so that sounds like you're kind of shying away from the committee commitment. So I appreciate that you recognize that there's that sort of time commitment associated with committees. So we really want people who are able to commit the time and the effort to contribute to committee work. But if you're not really ready or don't think you want to do that sort of thing, like that other list of regular volunteer positions, definitely open to you as less commitment, less responsibility. And you can do that sort of as you can. Like we'd love to see you weekly at our regular volunteer roles as well, but we understand things, it's life, right? So yeah, and things pop
Yeah,
up.
and if I could add a bit to that, it may actually, some of these roles may be more commitment than a committee. Some committees meet 8 times in a year, and it's a couple of hours, up to a couple hours once a month. Whereas another activity could be once a week. You come and join the restoration and site manager, Alejandro, who's new, and he's got volunteers who are helping with habitat restoration. And that's particularly busy right now until the beginning of the nesting season.
Yeah.
Or like Lena with the nursery, she may come twice a month and help out with the propagation and sales. And as the spring comes up, we're going to have that operation more active because people start planting now even. And there's education events, there's special projects you can get involved in, like the demonstration garden. That's going to be a long-term project. So there might be a subcommittee that has then on the trails work. So
cool.
Yeah, and so the weekly volunteering with the regular volunteer roles. So not all those roles are really active right now anyways. And we're still trying to figure out the commitment for all of these positions. So even if you can't come once a week, if it's like once every 2 weeks, as long as there's some kind of regular, involvement, that would be great. So yeah, it's like once you're a member, your commitment is up to you, right? So anyways.
Cool. And then one last question from Kay Jolly, or I want to answer Allison. Will you be emailing the volunteer info to sign up? For sure. It's all in the chat, but I'll be emailing all the links we talked about. And you'll probably be getting that tomorrow. Or if I jump on it right away, then hopefully tonight. And yeah, so don't worry about that. Any links we've talked about, 100% in the email. Just keep an eye out for that. And then Kay Jollymore said, do membership fees qualify as charitable contributions? Just curious.
Yes, they do.
Sweet, nice.
Yeah.
And then Crystal just responded saying, totally thinking about doing stuff in other areas, and that's awesome, Crystal. Definitely do what you're interested in, because passion is what makes you, excited and wanting to come back. So I think that whatever you're passionate about or excited about, definitely look into that. So yeah. And if that's all for questions, I just wanted to say that I think it was Margot. Can't find your name anymore, but Beauchamp, I think, was the last name. And she mentioned that Malcolm Lowry actually used to live on the flats.
Yeah,
and
that's
so,
great.
Yeah,
Malcolm
and so
Lowry is a pretty famous writer. He lived on the flats for many decades, actually. And he was the author of Under the Volcano. So
yeah.
apparently it's a very famous novel.
So I'm going to attach a little link there, just talking
Yeah.
about his time on the flats, which I thought was really cool. So thank you so much. I think it was Margot again. I apologize.
Yeah,
if
I just wanted to quickly say he was more near Kate's Park where there was a community waters. So yeah, I don't know if that's part of the flats, but I just should qualify that.
It's all
Oh, yeah,
connected.
but it's so cool.
Yeah, I think he was in the squatter huts a bit, but he did hang out near Wayawichin too. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so
But I
that's
don't know if there's anyone from Sleotuth in the session, but we are making sure the organization is prioritizing participation and involvement through paid and volunteer experience. So we do have representation on the board. We are, and Squamish Nation, and we also prioritize it in some of our HR work. So, and then our project involvement, so participation. And Tsleil-Waututh has also started an outdoor school. So we're working with supporting some educational activities in relation to that kind of activity.
Yeah, so thank you everybody for joining. It's still a bit awkward for me to just talk to a computer and a presentation like this. I much prefer, having that dynamic with people in person, but thank you for dealing with this new situation, but I really appreciate it.
And actually,
You're awesome, Marissa.
Marissa, you made me think about online. Like that's one thing that the programs committee is going to be kind of looking at is how can we make our time right now easier through the programs that we do. So how can we engage with the community that is out there in a way that isn't just having us be at the screen, but sharing what we're doing off screen? So how can we come up with some ideas to engage with one another, lift each other up, and help us learn about what's going on, how we're working to conserve this site and work in community and keep kind of dealing with this current situation and not being so isolated and alienated, but staying connected. So, if you have ideas, if you're working with a group that wants to make a proposal in that regard, these are the kinds of things that we all really need right now. So, and our staff is working on that too, because we're all dealing with it, having, to work remotely a lot. We're finding it too. So we're in this together. And so really appreciate the work that Nicole and Marissa have been doing with the rest of the team and what they're doing today and helping spread out and connect with everyone on how you can get involved too.
Yeah, I can't wait to meet you. Once you start signing up, I'll be organizing some in-person, like on-site orientations with small groups, like 3, 4, 5 people maybe, and then we can go on a site walk and meet each other and safely. So I look forward to it. Thank you.
Cool. Good to see everyone. Have a good weekend. Enjoy that somewhat cloudy, somewhat nice weather. Okay, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.